Hello! So these are techniques on quietening the mind and the thoughts. Over the course of the past probably 10 years, I have been studying a bunch. I've practiced a lot by myself and I've read a lot of books and I've done some courses and experiences here and there and a lot of practice, just a lot of practice. And it's still a work in progress, but the fact that I have these tools really help out in the moments that I need the most. And instead of spiraling out, I go back to these tools and I regain like this sense of harmony and grounding within myself. So these techniques are like meditation techniques. One is called the Celestial Gate, which is basically as you have your nose behind with, like, if you imagine a place just behind your nose inside, just the middle point, and you basically start breathing with your concentration only on that one single point. You're not controlling the breath, you're allowing it to freely go in and out in inhalation and exhalation, but you focus all your mind only on one single point, which is that place just behind the nose. And when you do that long enough, you start to experience things in your body. It takes practice, but it really helps. And it's a great practice of concentration, because I have learned that one of the biggest things in terms of controlling your mind, it's not really in an aspect of control that is harsh, it's more in an aspect of knowing how to direct it yourself and impose your own will in what you wish to focus it on. So any exercise and technique that works on that concentration will help you learn that. And it could be anything, to be honest. This is just one example. There's people who do that by doing art or music or organizing. Like, it's about knowing how to focus your mind and not allow it to spiral in all of these directions and thinking that it controls you, but you focus it on something you specifically want. So that's one of the exercises that I've done. I don't do it all the time these days, but I probably should. It's a really good one. Another one is, as I was saying, redirecting the thought into a positive one, redirecting the attention. So one thing that I realized was when I was a child, I was always I don't know why I started doing this, but I remember doing it, which is like any thought that I had that might have been negative or even judgmental towards someone else or towards myself, I would go around and turn it into something positive. And actually even just say the complete opposite. Just like turning it into like loving thoughts. Oh, this person is beautiful. Oh, I'm beautiful. Oh, I love myself the way that I am. Oh, this must be happening. There must be good reason for it. Everything will be okay. There's always a way for everything. And just anything that would happen, I would recognize it. I wouldn't stuff down my emotions, but I would just try to see the silver lining in it all the time. And then I stopped doing that. And that was my spiral period of time. And then I read a bunch of books who told me about the same thing. And I was like, I'm gonna start doing that again, because that worked really well for me. And it's sort of like you don't really... It quickly becomes unimportant, whatever it was that you were thinking about. If you counterbalance it like right away, it's like putting another stone in a scale. You had one which was coming down with your thought, and then you just put another one on that one, and it just becomes sort of neutralizes itself and your mind just sort of moves on. That's mostly my experience, to be honest. Another one would be, take the mind to an elevated state. Focus your attention on thoughts that counter the negative, which is basically what I just said. So, for example, would be reflection on peace when anger arises, love when thoughts of intolerance, contentment when greed arises. So you're actually invoking the feeling and the thought of what you actually wish to experience. Sometimes in life, for example, if there is a moment in which you might not be feeling loved by other people, instead of dwelling on the perspective that those people are not loving you, and why and how can I change them, and why are they not loving me and whatnot, it's much more, if you keep dwelling on that, then your whole experience is going to be of not feeling loved, because that's the feeling and the emotion you're focusing your attention on. And if those moments, even if someone is acting in that way towards you, you just, with your own self, you just sort of focus on, I love myself. I know how love feels in my body. It feels like this warm hug, and I feel safe, and I feel present. And your whole system of experience just changes, because you're not focusing on that pain anymore. You're learning how to create within yourself the emotion that you actually wish to experience. Obviously, it's good to work through any emotions that arise and not ignore them or stuff them down. But after that, it's always important to recognize what is the emotion that we actually wish to feel, and to create that within ourselves. To create that mastery of emotions is not just to be able to feel everything negative profoundly, or everything that is uncomfortable. If you dwell on it all the time, that's probably most of what you're just going to continue to experience. I speak this out of someone else might have a completely different experience. I myself, speaking from my own specific experience, for as long as I dwelled on that pain, I kept feeling more of it. When I started to remember how it felt, certain moments and experiences that I had in my childhood, and how it felt to feel healthy, and how it felt to feel happy, and how it felt to feel at peace and at ease, and not be on edge that something's gonna happen all the time, and how it felt to be present and to not really be in a desire for something to change all the time, but to just be present in what is ever changing in the present moment. When I started to focus on that, I started to experience it a lot more. And those days become a lot more now than any of the other ones where it was down, or where it felt painful or sad. And it's not that I don't feel sadness anymore. I do. In the sense of needing to cry, and something arises, this emotion that is deep within me. But I know that it doesn't define me, because it's just an emotion that I'm experiencing, and it's okay to feel it. It's amazing to feel it. How amazing it is to be alive and to be able to feel. And then I remember, how does it feel to feel that warmth and that safetyness and that presence and that love within? That gratitude. Perhaps that's why that whole thing of writing down what you're grateful for came from, because when you start doing that, you start to change the emotions that you're feeling in that moment, because your focus changes. It focuses into a feeling of abundance, of everything that you have and everything you already experienced that you really enjoy. And the more you focus on that, the more you create that in your life. So after that one, I have so from a book that I read from the yoga system, one of the things that came about as an exercise was a potent counter thought. So basically, if someone has some sort of a deity, to call upon their name, to imagine their face, to feel the energy and the frequency that they invoke, that specific deity invokes within someone, that is something that is really helpful, because it doesn't really matter if that person existing or that image existing or not. It's about when you focus on that image, what that image represents. If that image represents this peace within, the more you think about it and the more you imagine it, or the more you look at an image of it, and that's what it's constantly reminding your brain, that's what you're prompting yourself to experience more and more and more of. So it makes completely sense why so many religions have these deities and these images that people pray to and have devotion towards. It's not necessarily to have a blind devotion towards another human being, or this sort of like cult-like adulation. It's more about experiencing the sensation, emotion, and state of being that deity or that image or that name represents. And to be able to, the more you focus your attention on that, the more you start to experience those qualities within your own self. That was my own personal observation and conclusion from all the things that I've seen around in the world, and even for me growing up in the Catholic Church until I was about 17, 18, I don't know, something like that. I always wondered why there were so many images of this men and so many stories of God and this and that. I questioned a lot, and I found it so interesting. Why are we staring at images of someone with bleeding and just like dragging itself? And I always just found that like I didn't understand what's the adulation towards, because I didn't feel that. I felt a sensation of what God means to me and what consciousness means to me. I could even feel a warmth towards the image of what that man represented, or that woman as Mother Mary represented, but I didn't understand the adulation towards it. And I can't speak for other people, and I've observed many different ways of adulation that people might have, or devotion that people might have, and each person knows what works for them, and it doesn't really matter. Each one of us should just go along, as long as we're not hurting anyone else, if we're doing something for ourselves in this manner. Like, each person should just follow their own heart and what makes sense to them. And I realized, I think it was when I was in India, and I was doing the silent retreat, and I was in this hall. This is like a whole meditation hall that is filled with the most beautiful paintings on the ceiling, and like there's this gigantic Buddha in the front, in the altar, just like in the middle of the room, middle of back, like centered. And I just remember like, and there's all of these images, and I just suddenly like understood, like it's not, it could be a person, it could be a spirit, and it could even show up in front of you as that. But it doesn't really necessarily matter, because what really matters is that every time you're putting yourself in front of that image, or that you're paying devotion to the qualities of what that image represents for you, you're invoking those qualities within yourself, and you're invoking to experience that state of being as well. Whether that's compassion. Every time you look at someone, even if it's a living person, and you observe an act of compassion, in that moment you feel the sensation of what it feels like to have compassion. And the more you see that, the more you're able to experience that quality in your day-to-day life. So it made sense to me suddenly, like why people had such an immense devotion towards these images, and why it made sense for them. And yeah, that was a really good conclusion. At least it made sense for me at the time. More. Another thing is, like, anytime we're going through something, if it's getting to a bit on a hard side, we can always just think of something really good that we got to experience. Some moment, some sort of moment, something that really felt really peaceful and harmonious and good for you. And that really helps to change the state of your mind and of what you're feeling in your body, and to come back to your body and to presence, because you're invoking your own sense of emotion. I usually like to think of the days that I spend like at the beach in this free wild range kind of life. I might not live that every day, but the days that I do, it feels so good. And when I need, I just start to imagine those days and remember those memories, and that feeling comes to me and I start feeling it right here in my chest. So that's a really good one. Or to just think about like a place that you really like, even if you've never been there. If you have like this idea that the Amazon forest brings you peace, you can also just imagine it, or have an image of it close by to where you usually are most of the time. Like, all of those simple things are just reminders for us to be the ones that are managing and creating out of willful choice, or experience of state of being, basically. Another one is mantras. So mantras, any mantra that feels uplifting, you can repeat it until you feel at ease again. I started doing this for quite some time. The mantra that I have that is the most close to me is Om Mani Padme Hum. And this was before I went to India and before I went to Dharamshala, where there's such a huge Tibetan culture and Tibetan Buddhism culture. I just feel a deep connection with that mantra, and whenever I need to feel safe or to feel grounded, I start doing it, basically. I didn't have a mala before. I have one now that I bought in that trip, and so I made one with just line, and I just would do 108 knots and I would do it. And I don't know. I remember growing up and we used to pray on the, we call it a different thing. I can't remember, the rosary. The rosary. We used to pray on the rosary, like the Heavenly Father and the one with the Mary. I still know them to this day because we repeated it so many times when I was little. And I used to really just not understand why we were doing that. Or like when you had the confessions and you would have to like And then he would confess, and he would say, like, you say this amount of times Hail Mary, and then you say this amount of times of Heavenly Father, and you're forgiven. And I didn't really understand how that worked and what was the purpose of it. No one ever explained it to me. I've came to the realization that it's, one, sounds are frequencies. Anything that we hear affects our state of being in every way. If something uplifts us, it's going to invoke that feeling of elation within us. If something is sad, then it's probably going to make us feel that feeling of sadness even deeper. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It means, depends on what are you wanting to experience or feel like you need to experience in that moment. And it might be different. I've also seen a lot of how, like, they've done tests on water and how much water we have in our body and how much the sounds would change the molecules of water and how they would rearrange themselves, like within it, and like the drawings, like the images that they would create depending on the music that they would play. And then when you think about that, how much water your body holds all the time, obviously frequency and sound is going to affect you. Like, you know, when you go to a place and there's a certain type of music and you start to feel drained, that it's probably because of the environment you're in and the music that's playing. And if you go to another different one, it might invoke a different kind of experience within your body. And so when you do mantras, first thing is you're using sound. So sound is going to change what you're experiencing it. Another one is you're using your own voice, which is like your own instrument, which lives right here in your throat and is one of the chakra points. Another one would be you're focusing your whole attention in this one sentence. And if even every time your mind starts to wander off, you go back to this one sentence and you're like, for these 30 minutes, I'm just going to repeat this sentence. There's a point in where your mind just does not think about anything. And you just, all you have in your mind is whatever mantra or like word you're repeating. That's all your mind is focused on. So it's an exercise of focus and of repetition and concentration as well. So I think that's also, that it's my own personal opinion that I think that. And so it's a lot of the same, because it's always about creating a way to focus your mind on something that you are choosing out of your own will, instead of it wandering off and you going in all of these directions. You start to become unconscious. If you become conscious and aware and you choose this way, no, I'm just gonna go this way, and it wants to wander off, no, just this way. It's like finding your direction, finding your focus, your concentration. And so in meditation, if you're just going in to meditate, one of the great things to do is finding something to put your focus on. So when you're meditating, it could be a mantra, it could be an image, it could be your breath. There's, I believe it was Shamatha, which is one of the meditation practices we had in the silent retreat, was to just focus on your breath. I believe they also do it in the, well, I don't know, because I haven't done that one yet, but just focusing on your breath. You're just looking as if like your whole attention is just observing your breath going in and going out, going in and going out, going in and going out. Just simply that. And then also you could do like counting. So I have a good exercise for that one as well, that calms your mind right away. Yeah, you can observe the rhythm of your breath and then counting the breath, which I have a whole explanation on that one, because it's a very interesting exercise I came across. In directing the breath, initiates fast and slow breathing, concentrates, and on the fact that inhaling and exhaling is never forced. The most elementary method of directing the breath is to become aware of the breath by counting the number of inhalations and exhalations while breathing. This technique is generally used to stop stray thoughts or draw the mind away from what is happening outside. This method should be abandoned once the mind is focused or the practitioner can become too dependent on an active process in quietening the mind. Holding the breath before or after inhalation or exhalation is used to allow the breath to reach every part of the body and be absorbed into deep tissues, internal organs, and bones before the dead air is expelled. So stopping, like the period in which you hold your breath, not to a point where it's uncomfortable, but that you're naturally holding it before you exhale, is to allow the air to go deep into like all the tissues and the internal organs and the bones, and then the dead air comes out. Carbon dioxide comes out. I actually had it like it was a... Wait, let me find it. So in counting the breath, you're basically just, for example, you could do 12. You inhale. So basically, I just did, which seemed like nothing, was I inhaled for 12 seconds. I held my breath for 12 seconds and I exhaled for 12 seconds. But I'm counting in my mind, and this really helps the mind to relax a lot. You can even do it if you want to like fall asleep, to start counting. It really gives the brain something to do, and it gets eventually tires off and stops roaming around everywhere. Another meditation technique is to focus your attention on a specific meridian or chakra or point in the body. You can focus in the celestial gate, as I told you. You can focus right here, you can focus right here, you can focus here. Any chakra really, you can focus. Any point in your body you want to heal, if it's in your foot, if it's in your knee, if it's in your shoulder, any point in your whole body. If you mentally just focus your attention in that place, you're directing all of your energy into it. And you're not only just controlling the mind, you're also sending energy into that place within your body. Another thing is you can focus on an object. We have that exercise in yoga, which is like to stare at a candle. There's a specific way in which to do it, not to harm the eyes. It can actually be helpful. But any object really, you can just stare at an image, and that's your focus, your point of focus, your point of meditation. And it's sort of just, it's to quieten the mind. And then for example, when you imagine in your eyebrow, in the point in your third eye between the eyebrows, you can imagine a pure white light emanating from it, or a red dot. That's one that is really used a lot. A red dot or white light emanating from it. Because light can also be used in every chakra has a specific color, and you can imagine that color in each chakra, and it unlocks experiences with time. it's not even about the time, it's about your own ability to focus. But practice makes perfect, and so that's probably why it takes time. Meditation, self-analysis, and prayer. Prayer is a good way as well, because you're focusing your attention on the things you wish to bring into your life and that you actually wish to focus your mind on. And as the last one, I wrote down, be mindful of what you allow into your mind. Thoughts and also indulgences, environment and what we watch, read, or listen to. And what we're around. Because all of those things are going to influence your mind, your perception, your way of thinking. So I would just say to be mindful about what we surround ourselves with. And I even work on that all the time. But it's a good thing to know, just to remind myself every time I need. So those are basically the techniques, the main techniques. It's a bunch of exercises, all of them very much focused on focus and attention, directing the attention of your mind into a single point or specific breath or image or sound. Any of those things are really good for the mind. That's it for today. Goodbye.